Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote-unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp, and those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, it is a Monday morning, and Patty Cuttell just arrived with coffee, so I was fixing my coffee, and we have another councillor coming in with coffees as well. My gosh, and Timbits also. Wow, this is quite an extravaganza, I must say. I just made my coffee, but you've got anyway. I'm confused now. That doesn't take much, does it? John Young just came in the studio as well with gifts, so I'm all aflutter. But again, that doesn't take much. We will talk to our councillors in just a couple of minutes, and but first I want to get to some business that is pressing. Let's talk to David Hendsbee, District 2, Preston, Chezzetcook, Eastern Shore. David, you have been a busy man the past 24 hours or so, right?
I'm kind of used to it. This is probably my fourth wildfire I had to deal with over my terms. So, yeah, it's been a busy day yesterday and anxious night, but now we're just getting to see what the assessment is this morning, and hopefully things will get better as the day progresses.
Okay, so we're talking with the Ostrea Lake fire. For those who don't know, I'm sure everybody listening does know because we've been covering it all morning, obviously, and I think people would be aware of this. But for those who don't know, give everybody the overview about the fire, if you will, David, when it started, and kind of do my job and let everybody know what happened here.
Okay. Well, yesterday and Sunday afternoon, June 22nd, around a little after 1 o'clock, a fire was detected in the Ostrea Lake area. I had to be driving by the Hedgerow shops, and I could smell smoke in the air. And then shortly after that, I could hear the DNR alarms going off, and then the fire trucks arrived into the area. So there was a fire. Active fire down the Ostrea Lake Road. They just closed off the highway on both sides of Smith Settlement. People know the highway between Hedgerow and Muscatine Harbor was blocked off both directions. Allow the fire trucks and stuff to get in there. People were evacuated from the Ostrea Lake Road from the beginning of Highway number 7 all the way down to the Wharf Road area. So if people know that area, there's about a half dozen side streets also affected. But as the firefighters and the helicopter was able to douse a lot of the water in the fire, plus the rain late yesterday afternoon and over the evening certainly helped. Right now they're doing an assessment of the fire presently. I just heard a few alarms go by here, a few fire trucks go by here just momentarily here in Muscatine Harbor. I'm at the Comfort Center here at the rink. And so we're just seeing how things go. So part of the area is still closed off because the active fire is still in progress.
Okay, and when it comes to people out of their homes, when are you anticipating they'll be allowed back?
We won't know that till we get updates from the DNR, which we expect the next update around noon hour today. But as stated earlier, right now they're using recon from infrared drones and stuff to get know where the hot spots are. The early prediction yesterday, about 35 hectares of fire zone was reduced to about 30 hectares, but when the fog and the smoke kind of cleared, they had a better sight of the area. But still, they have an active fire on site, and their firefighters are going back in this morning. They were pulled out last night. They did the protection of any structures if any of them became close to the fire, but no reports of anything like that lost, which is good news so far. But right now, they just getting up there, keeping water on the fire. We got tankers on site there to help with the water supply. Hopefully the helicopter being engaged soon. I haven't heard it yet, so we'll see what happens.
Any speculation as to what was the cause?
No comment at the present time. Investigators are on site checking that stuff out.
Okay, but needless to say, there's a burn ban in place, and if it were human related, then there could be potential fines applicable. Or what can you say about that?
I would suspect so if that is the case. Yes.
Okay, and but a burn ban was in place, right? Just for clarity's sake.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, David, like to add? I know you're busy. I just wanted to get you on to let everybody know about what's going on here. So
I just hope people will be patient and respectful of the police and the RCMP that are doing the RCMP and the firefighters doing their job. The area's still blocked off, so it's down the Ostrea Lake Road. So I ask people to be very patient and their cooperation be appreciated.
and that rain could not have come at a better time. Obviously, right? That was God sent.
That was God sent. I just wish it continued on today, but it's going to be a hot scorcher today, so hopefully we'll get most of it doused and not flare up.
And let's let this be a reminder to everybody listening to not abuse the burn ban. It's there for a reason, right?
Exactly, and especially avoid fireworks as well.
Okay, David, appreciate it. Good work as always, pal.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
All right, take care. David Hendsbee, District 2, Preston, Chezzetcook, Eastern Shore. And again, folks, do not, under any circumstances, abuse the burn ban, okay? It's there for a reason. Conditions are tinder dry out there. And we saw what happened in Tantallon, not to fearmonger, a couple of years ago now, but look, it doesn't take much. It really doesn't. An errant cigarette or just a slight bit of spark, and away we go. So let's be careful, and let's let this hopefully be our one-off for the summer in our region. And let's hope that it remains contained as well. So anyway. All right, it is a Monday, and traditionally we bring our councillors in studio, and we have done so today. Joining me here in studio is Patty Cuttell, District 11, Spryfield, Sambro Loop, and my councillor, Patty. Hello.
Hello, Todd. Nice to see you this morning.
Yeah, pull that mic up a little there so we can hear you. There
How's
we go.
that better?
Yeah, that's right. We want everybody to hear you, no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And John Young, District 14, Hammonds Plains, mentioning Hammonds Plains in that area, upper Hammonds Plains, Lucasville, middle, upper Sackville. John, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much, Todd.
All right, so this fire kind of rings
Yes.
true to you, eh?
It does ring a bell. We need to be more prepared, even if it doesn't happen in the area. I think we have to be more prepared just in case it does.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about routes out? And there's a lot of talk about that.
Routes out and routes in. Yeah. So the egress planning, I think it has to be more of a priority with the HRM2 as well, and hopefully staff are diligently working on that so we can avoid something like this in my area, Tantallon, and I feel bad for Ostrea Lake too. So I think the people in Ostrea Lake, if you just follow the directions of the people in charge, then hopefully we can get this remedied a little bit quicker than not.
Absolutely. And thanks to both of you for bringing in coffees and Timbits, by the way.
Yeah, Patty tried to one-up me again this time.
Yeah, you brought the bigger box of Timbits.
Yeah,
I think you
brought
me.
John, you did bring the bigger box of Timbits, I will say that.
Yeah.
However, the coffees, we will consume them throughout the morning as we go along here. And by 1 o'clock, we'll be vibing here nicely. How's that sound?
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I just when I'm talking about wildfires, I just want to mention too that we had the wildfires out in Spryfield and Purcell's Cove in 2008.
Yeah, that's right.
And yesterday I was on a hike with the Backlands Coalition and the McIntosh Run Watershed Association back into the Backlands, talking about that area being fire prone. So this is all very top of mind for me as well. And, I look around Spryfield, and as we continue to kind of sit on that edge of the WUI, which is the wilderness urban interface, I think we've learned lessons from Tantallon. It's taken, we're implementing them. I can see the response to the wildfire that's happening in David's district. The communication has been really good. Like we learned a lot of lessons. But to your point about the fire ban, need to take it seriously. It's super important because we do live in a fire-prone area, and it like you said, it doesn't take much.
And I think the fine is $25,000, is it not? The maximum fine?
Yeah.
Okay. John, do you know for sure?
I
Okay,
don't know
I think we
100%.
were chatting in the newsroom, and I think it's as much as $25,000. It's quite a hefty fine, and for good reason. All right, listen, folks, if you'd like to chat with one or both the councillors, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We've got lots and lots to get to today. But first, I wanted to start with both of you and get your take on a chat that I had with Sean Cleary last week, in which he said some pretty provocative things concerning the potential change that the provincial government may make to the Halifax Charter in the fall. Legislation would be required to do so, and among that change would be to give the mayor strong mayor powers. And Sean went on to say that he feels as though that the mayor is not a strong mayor. He referred to him as a weak mayor, and said that he feels as though that the province would use the mayor, Andy Fillmore, as a bit of a proxy or mouthpiece on behalf of them as a part of setting all this up. John, what's your take on this, if you have a take on this?
Well, I see us as a team. So in the analogy of a team, the mayor would be the coach. I think we should, if we have issues as a team of councillors, I believe that we should keep it in-house. Saying something in public, you can't unring a bell. So once it's out there, it's out there. So myself, I want the mayor to be successful, because if the mayor's successful, so is the city. So, and that's the way I look at it. So some of the things I agree upon when people put things on the floor, and some of them I don't. That relates to my district too. But as a mayor, I want the mayor to be successful. And I'm behind the success of the mayor. So that's where I stand.
Okay, so do you think that Sean Cleary did the right thing by speaking his mind, or no?
Sean Cleary spoke his mind. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Patty, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's an important topic to discuss. I don't and never have condoned name calling, or, I don't think that's right. And
is that what happened here?
There was, there's definitely some of that written in the news. If you didn't see it, I'm not going to repeat it. But that's no way to conduct business, and that goes on both sides. The mayor has also, called council names, and I think we've got to stop that. Across the country, we are seeing, the province step into municipal business. I think that's a concern because, as they say, municipal government is often referred to as the government closest to the people. And we're voted in by our residents, and we have a job to do in representing our districts. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a great form of democracy. Mm-hmm. I think that is representing the city. And so, to say that the city isn't being fairly represented, and that strong mayor powers would better address that, I think is perhaps misguided. And I'm not a big fan of the strong mayor system. That being said, I think we need to be talking about it. It's important, and it has an impact on our residents, and we need to understand what would a strong mayor system look like? Mm-hmm. What would that mean for local representation? Is that something that residents want? That wasn't on the table in the election back in October. So I think it's fair to have the dialogue. We just need to have that dialogue, proceed respectfully, and with like good serious thought. Yeah.
Well, some people out there like members of council to kind of go rogue a little bit and to be off the cuff and to be not as buttoned down as provincial and federal politicians are. What are your thoughts on that, Patty?
I don't think that's taking us down the road to good governance. I think we should be
good for my business.
It's good for your business. It's good for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with all those click clickbait.
Yeah.
But that's not the business we're in. We're in the business of governing. We're in the business of representing the interests of our districts, and we're there to make good decisions. And I think we need to, again, have those conversations. We should be free to speak our minds, but we should be doing that in a respectful way, looking for the best outcome for the city. John?
Yes, I think when we go from a me mentality to we should be more of a we mentality. The people in our districts voted us in to do a job and do it well and do it fiscally. And if that's the guidance of the mayor, then that's I think the thing that we should do. I like to personalize people's opinions and how they feel. We have to get out of our feelings. It seems like we're all caught up in our feelings right now, and we have to be more focused, more fiscal, and more responsible for the people that we represent.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with one or both the councillors about any of these issues or whatever else you've got in your mind. 902-405-6000. Halifax's Bike Lane Network is back in the agenda again this week. Tony Mancini is expected to table a motion looking for staff to report into the AAA Bike Network and all capital projects in the current 4-year capital plan. The motion says the report will include a list of bike lane projects proposed from 2025 through 2029 and their estimated cost, and assess the feasibility of alternative network solutions that could reduce future costs. I'll get the councillors' take and yours on all this when we come back. We'll be back. All right, have our councillors here in studio. John Young, Patty Cuttell, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. By the way, I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness. I was remiss in not mentioning that. On the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job as always. I'm not sure why that came to my mind, but it just did. Anyway, good. 902-405-6000. Before we go to the phones, quickly, I want to get your take on Councillor Mancini's proposed motion this week that will address bike lanes, a list of bike lane projects proposed from 2026 through 2029 and their estimated cost, and assess the feasibility of alternative network solutions that could reduce future costs and provide opportunities for additional external funding resources. So in other words, to that overage of whatever it is, $25 to $100 million to try and get some help with that. John, what's your take on this, first off?
Well, with the bike lanes, I'm more an advocate of multi-use pathways as opposed to bike lanes, because in a multi-use pathway you can walk, stroll, run, bike, several things. On a bike lane, you can bike. That's it. And the bike lane is on the road. Multi-use pathways as a buffer between the road. It's almost up like a sidewalk. It's just a wider sidewalk. They put a line down the middle, and then two ways of traffic on the multi-use pathway. For the bike lanes, yes, let's get some stats. Let's get some the staff report to see how we can do this, if we're going to do it, more efficiently in the future, and what are ways that we can make that connectivity. There's no connectivity out in my area. So this is right now. It's really is what we want in the urban core, then work its way out. Because we don't even have buses. So.
Yeah, that's right.
So how can we prioritize this? And when we're doing any future infrastructure, strategic infrastructure planning, how can we implement that into the planning too as well?
Okay. Will you support Tony Mancini's motion here?
I don't know.
You don't know? You haven't made up your mind yet?
No.
Okay. It's similar in a way to the mayor's motion, is it not?
It's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Patty, what's your take on this motion?
Oh yeah, I'm open-minded until I make my vote, but I'm leaning towards supporting it, of course.
Oh, is that right? Did you support the mayor's motion?
No, I think the difference is putting an immediate pause, which we've already approved budget, we've already approved plans, and I think, you need to keep going forward with those. But we have a new council, we have a new mayor. We should take a look at what's everything that's happening, what the costs are, and try to find alternative funding sources. Mm-hmm. I'm supporting the bike lane infrastructure, but I agree that finding other sources of funding is also kind of paramount when you look at the escalating costs. I think that it was over $80 we rely on the projects we do in Halifax. We rely on property tax for over 80%.
Yeah.
And in other places, that's like, between 40, 50, 60%.
Yeah.
People, other municipalities are getting transfers from the province for major infrastructure or from the feds. So, we have to start thinking about that. We can't be putting all of these expenses on property tax payers.
Okay, but to me, this is similar in that he's asking for the information, and the information comes back does not. There's a reason why he's asking for this information, and there'd be a reason why council would get a staff report on this, because there's the potential that it may be paused for a pause, or right.
But then at least we're doing a pause with the information as opposed to not.
Right, but I guess,
that's
I guess if it warrants a pause or if it warrants the information, and that could be a deciding factor, would that not? Why not press pause and to get that information? I guess
because we've already approved a budget for this year.
Yeah,
and there's already work that's
okay. So I guess ostensibly it's a pause after this year, potentially.
If that's what we end up deciding. We don't know. We're not there yet. But let's get the information and make an informed decision, and and have a good discussion about this. It's obviously a hot topic.
Okay, let's go to the phones. Mark, hello.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Thank you to the councillors for doing this.
Sure.
I actually, I have a question regarding the budget, and I actually don't know the details on this. It involves the budget for the police. Ever since, I think, 2017, 2018, there's been discussion of body cameras for HRP. Nothing seems to ever get done with that. I'm a strong proponent of this. It protects officers. It protects the public. It'll save us, I believe, money in the long run. And it's just a simple matter of justice for both sides. People lie. Cameras don't. I know councillors like Sean Cleary are vehemently opposed to it. He's anti-cop, though, clearly. I just want to know where we stand on this, because it's getting a little ridiculous. We're the only, as far as I know, major jurisdiction in Canada that does not arm our police with body cameras. I'll just go off the line here and let the councillors answer.
Okay, thanks for the call. All right. Patty, you want to take that first? Or?
I believe we approved the budget this year for body-worn cameras.
And what's the timeline in which they'll be used?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't sit on the Board of Police Commissioners, so I don't have all those details.
But it is a go, then. It's in the works. It's
a go. And our CMP, which, we do have an integrated police service. Our CMP are already green-lighted for body-worn cameras. And, we couldn't have half of our police force with body-worn cameras and the other half with not. So everyone will have them.
Okay, John, anything to add to this? Or
no, I'm in agreement for that, because it works both ways. It protects the police officers, and actually would help to protect the citizens of the area. So I think it's a win-win. It'd be good. We just got to keep an eye on how much it's going to be every year, and we're going to be more fiscal all the way around, and we have to be fiscal in that too as well.
Okay, Bobby, hello.
Good morning, Todd. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Mr. Young, I believe you're my council. I live in Indigo Shores.
Yes.
So my question for you is, as you know, there's only one in and out route into that community, and we have no fire hydrants. Has this been brought up, or is there anything going to be done about this? I'll hang up now and just listen to your comments.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, it's an issue that I brought up before, primarily in that district. That's a need, like with the Halifax fire and emergency. We have to look into that more, and also too with Halifax Water in that area. The stalling block of that is in the regional planning. The regional plan that just got passed for Phase 5, they're saying it's going to be another 4 years, so 2029 before I think a lot of this gets considered in District 14. That's why I voted against that. Well, part of the reason. There's quite a bit of reasons why I voted against the regional plan, but that's one of them. I think more attention has to be made in the outlying areas and districts in the HRM. We seem to get in the planning, strategic planning in the future. A lot of it always seems to be an afterthought in terms of egress, connectivity, transit. We're always put on the waiting list, and I believe that should change.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. If you've got a question or two or a comment for one or both of our councillors, give us a call. We've got the councillors for another half hour. 902-405-6000. We will be back. All right, so we have our councillors here in studio. Patty Cuttell, John Young, taking your calls. 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Sean, hello.
Hey, did you mean John?
Or sorry, John, yeah.
Oh, good, Todd. It feels a little weird talking about anything other than the fires. Of course, everybody's thinking about them today. But I did have a question that just had to do with budget review. I know that the councillors are both mentioned a few times today that they're interested in good fiscal responsibility. And bringing it back to the bike lanes, I'm a resident of the Almond Street area, and I remember when the construction was going on for those lanes, one of the things that both prolonged the construction and was an unexpected thing was that they discovered rail lines under Almond Street. And there was about a foot of asphalt that they needed to remove, which was quite thick. My question has to do more with the budget planning process. To me, something as fundamental as that should have been picked up before shovels hit the ground. And if we're talking about being good stewards of the purse, you would think that just prudent review before doing that would be something that they would do. So my question is more of a matter of curiosity. What is involved in the budgeting process and review of fiscal projects like this? I know this is a very specific example, but it also seems to me that just by doing a simple review of things, you could probably either avoid costs altogether or better plan for them. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that if the councillors can talk about that budget review process and what goes into budget planning.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. This is an old city, and sometimes it's not until you stick a shovel in the ground do you find out what's under there. I know that we're replacing a pipe in the Bears Road area for water that's 130 years old. So some things were documented and some things simply weren't. So when it comes to the budget, often when we approve the budget, it's to hire someone to do the work, and then you discover it in the process. I mean, to do that pre-work means that you'd have to green light and budget for the project. So it is a bit of a process. I think for the most part that the due diligence is done. I can think of another example in my area where the infrastructure was assessed and it became part of the project to replace this key infrastructure piece. But sometimes that stuff is found, and sometimes it's not. And, I think that's just a reality of working in a city as old as ours.
John?
Yeah, I think...
I think that's a reasonable answer. And I guess I didn't really think about how well the things were documented, but it would just seem to me that you really wouldn't need to do that much work to figure out where old rail lines were. I mean, we have maps that would have indicated those things. And even just a cursory look of those would have likely given you the results. So although I can appreciate, it's very hard to maybe find a lead pipe that was put in, as you said, 130 years ago, something like rail lines, I think, would be a little bit easier to spot.
Yeah, I think that was perhaps an unfortunate oversight there.
Okay, Sean, does that address your issue?
I guess.
Sorry, John, I apologize.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
It addresses it as much as we can. But another thing too on good fiscal spending about the 80% coming from property taxes. I agree that we need to look at some new things. But when we're giving certain prominent businesses that occupy a significant portion of our waterfront special taxation status, I don't know how we're going to get there.
Okay, thanks for the call, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Ian, good morning.
Good morning. My question is for John. John, I live on Pockwalk Road. We've talked quite a bit in the past.
Yes, we have.
And most of them have been good conversations.
Yeah.
In 2023, 2024, there was over 900 occupancy permits for new buildings on Pockwalk. I don't know what it is for this year, but I know it's going to be more. And as you've already spoken to, I mean, the planning always seems to be like the cart before the horse. It always seems to be catching up. And one thing that I noticed right away a couple days ago is the intersection with Pockwalk and Hammonds Plains Road. There was something happening at the Baptist church, and basically traffic was lined up all the way from the church to that intersection. And I'm thinking, boy, in a year, we're going to have 900 more cars on that road, one way in, one way out. We've had a fire. Like, are they at least thinking about changing that intersection to increase traffic flow? Like, it just seems like there's so many things going wrong in that area, and I know Sackville's the same way.
Yeah. Are you done, Ian?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Yeah, nice talking to you again. What has to happen is I think all this new development without strategic infrastructure planning is the end result of all this congestion, egress issues, non-bus issues, everything that's going on Hammonds Plains Road, Pockwalk, Upper Hammonds Plains, and Lucasville Road, and now this traffic congestion on Sackville Drive. I think what has to happen is I've been working with some local property owners, and there's a possibility of getting a road from Pockwalk Road out to Hammonds Plains Road. That would ease some of the traffic. So that's in the works right now. And
good.
Yeah. So there's things. So I reached out last week on my Facebook, and I posted. I was in 29 minutes in traffic for 4.3 kilometers to get to two meetings on Hammonds Plains Road. And I reached out to the community, and you were one of the respondents, and I said, give me some suggestions for road construction mitigation. And a lot of it is maybe we can do a lot of that at night. We can maybe start in the morning, not in the morning, but midweek, like Wednesday to Sunday. So I'm getting those suggestions. Once I compile all those suggestions, I'm going to take them to staff, Public Works, Planning and Development, Traffic Services, and Transit, and try to get something from all the units to work collaboratively and cohesively so we can solve some of these issues in these areas of District 14, which also affects the HRM itself.
Yeah. I mean, I feel your frustration, and I feel the mayor's frustration. I mean, I understand, like, with the bike lanes, how you voted and why you voted it. I'm always amazed, having lived in different places, why, I guess it's the city planners don't look at how other cities have dealt with the same issues, because we're not the only city to deal with, growing pains and stuff.
Yes, and you told me about Portland.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. I mean, one of the things with the bike lanes in Portland, Oregon is most of the bike lanes aren't even lanes. They're residential streets where the people who live on the street can drive on the street, and it's bicycles, so it costs them virtually nothing to do it. And they only put in, multi-purpose and bike lanes where they really had to. But they also go from A to B. And I mean, I drive in home care. I drive all over the place. It's the nature of my job. And I'm seeing there's more cars, there's more people. And, I think the solution's got to be thinking more cooperatively and more proactively. This thing of hurry up and wait, I mean, I think I probably said to you on one of my emails, like this, let's wait and plan. Well, we have a great Bedford ferry because of that strategy. I mean, out where we are, it's scary how much development's going on.
Okay, Ian, in the interest of time, we're going to move on. Thanks for the call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. 902-405-6000. Let's talk to Ken. Hello, Ken.
Hi, Todd.
Hi there.
I got two questions. One for Patty, one for John. Patty, for the first time, for the first one, you say you're in for fiscal. Spending or whatever the case may be. But when the mayor says, okay, this bicycle lanes are going out of control, we need to stop this and do a review, you voted no. Just about everybody except for the first couple of, the bicycle from the Nova Scotia Biking Association or whatever, which is right out to lunch as it stands, there's less than 1% of people that are using bike lanes in the city. And now now you're talking, oh, well, this has already been budgeted. And then out the other side of your mouth, you're saying, oh, well, now we got to look for more money from some other people to finish it off. Like, do you not understand we have the oldest population in Canada? How many people do you actually think are out there on bikes?
Yeah, Ken, thank you for the question and the opportunity to talk about this. And I get it. When it comes to the planning and the budgeting, you have to remember that this is over several years. So it's not just budgeted for this year; it's budgeted over many years. So you can proceed with what's happening this year while you do take a look and review what's happening in future years to see if you can find cost efficiencies. So that's why I was interested in seeing what was planned for this year to move forward, because we need to move forward. But also, taking a look at what's going on so we know when we can make kind of rational, informed decisions around changes that we might make, because making changes also costs money. In terms of the number of people using bike lanes, one of the things that has me a little bit upset is the minimal planning requirements that the province mandated the municipality to adopt in our recent regional plan review. And one of the minimal planning requirements is that we cannot require any parking in any new multi-residential buildings. So when you look what's happening, in the South End with these 8-unit buildings going in and established residential neighborhoods, if you look what's happening in Spryfield, where we've approved through the Housing Accelerator Fund, 26 multi-unit developments were approved in Spryfield. None of them require parking. And so I start to think, well, how the heck are all these people going to start getting around? So it's not necessarily just the people of today that I'm thinking about, it's the people of the future. And, when you're in this position, one is being responsive to the needs of today, but one is also having that, future-looking lens to say, where are we headed and how are things going to be different and when's the time to invest? I was in Calgary a couple of years ago, and they have this amazing, this super long, bike path that it's like, I don't want to say it's like 100 kilometers. It's amazing.
Whereabouts in Calgary does it go?
It goes right into the downtown, and then it follows the river, and it connects a number of communities together. But that was put in decades ago. So they're not having the challenge of needing to squeeze it in to an existing city like Halifax. That again, we're a very old city.
It wasn't It wasn't there decades ago, because I only moved back east in 2004, and there was not one single bike lane in Calgary when I left there.
It's the multi-purpose. It's that beautiful multi-purpose path, and I've rented bikes and I've biked it, and it's been there for decades. And it was a part of a centennial project or something, if I recall correctly.
Well, see, the first mistake is putting rational and bike lanes into the same sentence right off the bat. But here goes into my second question that either you or John can answer, or whatever the case may be. You're talking about density and all this here, and there's going to be so many more here, and there's going to be another tower here and another tower there. Okay, why are you guys putting up so many no turn on a red light? Like Joseph Howe. Why can't you go up the hill, Joseph Howe? Right? Over here on this side in Dartmouth, right between McDonald's and Subway, you can't turn right on the Windmill Lane. Like, what is the problem?
Okay, John?
Yeah, well, I see that as an issue too myself. A lot of the right-hand turns, I believe that you're mentioning, are leaving room for the bike lanes themselves or future bike lanes. It also
there is no bike lane on Windmill Road.
Oh, okay.
It's pedestrian priority.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So my bad, my mistake. But what I'm saying is, like, I noticed too that a lot of the right-hand turns, that affects a lot of the delivery drivers and the business people too. So just down by the Scotiabank Center, you have to wait until the light's almost yellow to turn right there, just up from Citadel Hill. So a lot of this, I think, for the planning part of it, I think it has to be more strategic and better planned out for future use, not just for the current use that's happening right now.
John, I used to drive tractor trailer in the city doing the port with the sea containers and that, and I can tell you right now, Hollis Street and Lower Water Street,
yes,
two worst decisions ever right there for the bike lanes.
Okay, Ken, I'm up against a break. I got to let you go. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. 902-456-6000. We'll be back with the councillors. All right, we got a bit of time left for their councillors. Time flies here. 902-456-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Rob, hello.
Hi there, Todd. How are you today?
Well, you?
My question for the councillors. I'm a long-term resident of Muscatava Harbor. I just want to know how much of our tax dollars are funding projects in the city, because we only have 2 ball fields and a community center and a library down there.
Okay. Patty, wants to take that one?
There is supposed to be a service study coming, a cost of service study coming. I haven't seen it yet, but you know what? I agree with you. I have similar concerns. I mean, when you look at the tax breakdown, like we know from residential areas, if you're just looking at residential tax, areas like Bedford are punching, way above their weight. The biggest drivers of property taxes, of course, are commercial areas, and that's the downtown, that's Burnside and Bears Lake, is especially with all the expansion happening out there, that's creeping up as well. So it's not like the suburbs are funding the downtown, or the downtown's funding the suburbs. I mean, that we do need to have a study. But what I do know is that the services that we have in our suburban areas and our rural areas, they need to be improved. I agree with you 100% on that. And, it's a matter of trying to balance it and work it all out. But one of the key pieces, and this is just following up on the conversation that Councillor Young was having, I think, with Ian, and he was mentioning the strategic growth and infrastructure, and that is a plan that we're working on now, the strategic growth and infrastructure priority plan, and it's like we need to be strategic. I think too often we've been in the past, things have been done a little willy-nilly based on political will and not necessarily on strategic planning. And so I am a big fan of strategic planning, because that in the long run is what's going to make us a more cost-effective organization. knowing where we need to invest in things and why. So there is also there's a parks plan coming too. So hopefully some of that will get sorted out through that work, because I agree with you. We need to make sure that that all our communities have some investment and some services.
Hey, John, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, just to add to what Patty mentioned, yeah, I believe the outer line, the suburban and the rural areas are less funded fully for all their parks or essential services, and I think that more has to be done as a priority from the rural suburban areas into the city. So more attention and more funding has to be done for that.
Yeah, but we need to not use that anecdotally. We need to actually let's get the information on that, because that will help prioritize it.
Yes.
So since COVID, Muscat Harbour has grown almost twice of what it was before COVID. And there's talk of, we wanted sidewalks in our village. And there's talk that we have to pay for it on our taxes.
Yeah, so that's sidewalks.
The city pay, does the city, people in the city have to pay taxes to get sidewalks?
Yeah, so there's different tax tiers. There's the urban, like suburban and rural tax tier, and so, if you are within, I think it's a kilometer of a sidewalk or a bus stop, you pay a different tax rate, which is higher. So the urban tax rate is higher than the rural tax rate. I believe we're taking a look at that too to make sure that it's fair. But so you would have, it's almost like a local improvement charge on your tax bill for putting in the sidewalks. I think that needs to be looked at in its entirety to see what all the services that you're getting, to see what's a fair amount to charge for a sidewalk. It can't be just looked at in a silo, because I look at Spryfield, for example. I've got probably 40,000, I'm estimating, based on housing completions, 40,000 people out there. And when I go to a town like Truro, which has 12,000 people, and they have a farmer's market, and they have this great, a sports center, and they have a whole downtown with businesses and and I look at Spryfield, I definitely don't feel we have the infrastructure there that reflects the population. And so, to your point, I agree we need to look at service standards.
Okay, Rob, we're out of time. Councillors, I apologize, we're out of time. Time flies. We left a lot of you on the line. By the way, if you want to stay on the line and comment during our open hour, you certainly can do so. We'll be taking your calls for the next hour. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach it. So again, if you didn't get a chance to talk to the councillors, what you'd like to have your say, stay on the line, 902-405-6000. Councillors, appreciate it very much. John, thanks for coming in, pal.
Thank you very much.
And Patty, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I always enjoy being here.
All right, John Young, Patty Cuttell, your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Lots and lots to get to on this Monday morning. Is something that perhaps some of you might want to talk about is what happened in the Middle East over the weekend and what's currently still going on with this U.S. involvement in the attack on Iran when it comes to the strikes on 3 nuclear sites, I guess we could call them. What are your thoughts on this? Was it a mistake for the United States to get directly involved in this conflict, folks? Was it a mistake? And how concerned are you over further escalation? Do you think that potentially this thing could deteriorate into a ground war? I have my reservations when it comes to that. I don't think that the U.S. is going to do that. But look, I guess you never know. I suppose that's the point of the conversation. You just never know how things can unravel. And in a hurry, I suppose it depends on Iran's counter here or response to this. And what about regime change in Iran? Is it realistic to expect regime change? And what do you replace it with? Have we not learned our lessons from other wars here, and in particular in the Middle East and Iraq and Afghanistan, where we know that regime change is often temporary, and it's only strong when the country is occupied generally, or there's a strong military presence by militaries like the United States military. And once those depart, things deteriorate quickly. We saw the Taliban retake Afghanistan, regime change. Is that realistic? And what are your thoughts on that? How about locally here? Of course, we had our councillors here in studio, and there is a bike lane. Look, folks, I know that there's a lot of talk about this, but I think that it's a legitimate issue. When you look at the $100 million expenditure, which is what it's going to be, at least now in capital spending, and likely going to be more than that. It's gone up. It's ballooned from the $25 million. And we know that Andy Fillmore's motion did not pass to press pause on bike lane construction. And now a similar, what I would call a similar motion, is going to be tabled this week by Tony Mancini, looking for a staff report on the bike network and all the capital projects in its current 4-year capital plan. The motion says the report should include or will include a list of bike lane projects proposed from 2026 to 2029 and the estimated cost, assess the feasibility of alternative network solutions that could reduce future costs, and provide opportunities for additional external funding sources. So do you support this motion? And again, is it very similar to what Mayor Fillmore tabled? I would say that it is very similar, with the exception, I suppose, that this year construction or whatever is tendered would be fulfilled or would be completed. But aside from that, is it fiscally prudent to say, look, let's have a look at what's tendered or what the projects are, what the proposed costs are, how we might be able to save money, perhaps realign or come up with alternative routes, and find money from more than just the taxpayers. See if, in fact, the federal government or the provincial government or some other revenue stream might be applicable here. Why not? Why not? I don't see any issue with this at all. I think that it would be prudent to do so and probably reckless and irresponsible not to do so. So what's your take on that? Also, Halifax councillors have passed a planning guide or have passed a plan guiding growth in the region for years to come. This on the CBC website this morning. Would say there's nothing they can do about provincial housing rules many residents call a massive overreach from the provincial government into municipal affairs. On Thursday, residents at City Hall spoke for hours at a public hearing on the new regional municipal planning strategy. It'll replace the current plan, which is in place since 2014. And staff said that the upgrade was needed to prepare the region to grow to 1 million people by 2050. 1 million people, folks. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think that it would be needed? Is it necessary? And what about the provincial government and its role in the municipality? Do you believe that the province has too much say or sway over municipal affairs and pushing this agenda to expand the population by 1 million people by 2050 here in HRM? What are your thoughts on that or anything else you've got in your mind? The way to reach us again, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. What is on your mind today? Let's talk to James. Hello, James.
Hi, good evening. Calling about a topic that I have mentioned once before, the possibility of free public transit in HRM. And I have an interesting update, I think. Tomorrow, the members of the Democratic Party in New York City will go to the polls to elect their candidate for mayor. So it's the primary, as they call it in the U.S. And of course, New York City being 90% Democrat, whoever gets chosen in this primary tomorrow is very likely to win the mayoral election. The leading candidate for the Democrats is a state assemblyman, we would call it MLA, Zoran Mamdani, and he's running, his platform includes free public transit for everybody in New York City. Just that. It sounds radical, but it's true. They've run some experiments in the 5 different boroughs of New York City. They offered free public transit on specific routes, and ridership, not surprisingly, soared. And of course, traffic congestion went down. They couldn't really measure that scientifically. But I don't know. I think it's an idea worth considering in HRM. Yeah, it costs money, but it does a lot of good things. And you can, of course, collect money otherwise. You don't have to get it from the fares on the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge with that,
Anyway.
James, one of the challenges, and there's always challenges, of course, is getting transit so that it's reliable. Whether it's free or not, if it's not reliable and people can't count on it, then I think that we're going to have continuing problems, like the ferries, for example. The Dartmouth and Burnside Ferry. I mean, if I had to rely or count on those, I would make alternative plans because they're canceled again this morning.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. They always say frequent and reliable. That will get people on transit, whether it's ferries, buses, or maybe we're going to get another ferry, or heaven forbid, we might get some rail thing in from Bedford.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a multi-factor situation, and New York City, of course, has subways and lots of good public transit.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, I just think it's an idea we need to consider because everybody's complaining about traffic congestion, and yet when I called previously, the Halifax Transit budget is about $60 million out of a $1.3 billion HRM budget. So it's not massive. It would require some creative work on revenue or reducing other expenditures, but it would have a lot of benefits for almost everybody in HRM. The people who take the bus or ferry would not have to, and those tend to be, of course, lower income people, so that would be a good thing. And then people who drive their cars, less congestion. Anyway.
Okay, James. All right, there's the idea. Thanks. 902-405-6000. Ron's giving us a buzz. Hello, Ron.
Hi, Todd. I wanted to get in, talk to the councillors, but anyway, yeah, Patty was there, and she's in my area. I know there's a lot of talk about the bike lanes and all that, and the cost and everything, but there's another issue that I've always wondered about in the last year or so. I've driven all over Halifax, and sometimes I go to Dartmouth and, Colby Village and all that. It's a big area. There's a lot of speed bumps everywhere, and I've listened to the show a lot, but I've never heard anybody really comment on this and the cost of those. I was wanted to know, ask the councillors if they knew how much it costs per bump to install these things, because 2 new ones just came up in my area, and I don't think they're necessary at all. I mean, you got to go around a slight corner, and there's a group mailbox there, and there's cars parked on the other side. As soon as you get around the corner, there's a speed bump. And 200 feet away is a stop sign. And then on the other, if you keep on going down that road, you come out of a subdivision. If you're going up the hill, you got to go up a hill, and at the top of the hill is a speed bump. I mean, you can't even, I don't understand, just don't get it at all. But there's a lot of them around, and just wondering what the cost is to install all of these. There must be I have no idea how many. There's got to be 3,000 to 5,000 of these all over Halifax and Dartmouth.
Well, Ron, I would say they definitely slow you down. They slow me down. I know that when I know they're there, I definitely reduce my speed. Would you not agree with that they reduce speed?
Well, you got to slow down. But the other thing there is, Todd, is one thing I don't understand is when they install these things, they put the warning sign right beside the bump. If you're not paying attention and you maybe in a different area that you're not familiar with, I mean, all of a sudden you're right on these bumps, and then you look, oh, there's a warning sign, but it's right there. Why don't they put them 30 feet away? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing there was fire trucks and ambulances and things like that. They must really inhibit them for getting where they have to go. I mean, they have to go over them, and so I don't know.
Okay, Ron, appreciate the call. Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. Look, what will reduce people's speed in these areas? And that needs to be considered, right? And look, speed bumps definitely do that. They definitely slow you down. And sometimes you hit one and you're not expecting it. Well, you learn your lesson. and you definitely know that it's there afterwards. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Give us a call. What's on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Got a lot to open lines for you folks. What's on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Todd, how are you doing?
Well, you?
Good. I'm in Manitoba. And like I told Vanessa, a tornado touched down in Saskatchewan last week. I'm calling, I listen to you every day, my friend. You asked the other day there, I'm going to learn speech law. You asked the other day how a person's doing financially compared to now, from now to last year. Now, on work part-time on a pension, and my goal was, when we start the new year here in January, my New Year's resolution, I'm going to be debt-free. Now, I still got to pay a light bill, an internet bill, and phone bill, but as far as these credit cards, they're paid up.
Right.
So I just, you asked that Thursday, Friday, and I just thought I'd call and say hi to you and say, yeah, I'm not trying to brag over the phone here, but, I said my goal is I'm going to be debt-free, which I'm debt-free. Still, again, saying again, I still got to pay light bill and internet and phone bill, but as far as credit cards, I owe no money.
Well, it's good for you, Mike. That's excellent, and must make you feel good, eh?
Yeah, I'll make this quick. I'm on pension, work part-time, and budget myself. I'll make this quick, budget myself. Got so much money due me the month, and try to bank money away every month. But I want to say thank you, and thank Vanessa. I love your show.
Okay, pal.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, pal.
Okay,
take care.
Bye-bye.
902-405-6000. Greg, hello.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Not bad, brother. Just thought I'd touch up on the speed bumps. The speed bumps have become excessive. Listen, man, I drive around this city 13 to 14 hours a day doing Uber Eats. I have over 21,000 deliveries in the city of Halifax in the past 2.5 years, okay? I am out here driving every day. I just don't understand the need for more bike lanes. I'm going to tell you right now, if I run into 5 bikers a week, that'd be hard-pressed to say I run into a handful a week. So why are they taking the time and knocking all these new trees down or these old trees to access more bike lanes? It's completely foolish. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. Like I said, I work 14 hours a day. I barely run into any bikers at all. So to even think about adding more bike lanes is completely ridiculous. It's not even logical. It's ridiculous. And the speed bumps, I can see little side streets where kids could be playing, things like that, but they just installed 5 or 6 more of them on Willard Street. And, Willard, you can only go so fast on Willard Street. So why do they keep adding these speed bumps is beyond me. And to think about having 1 million people in Halifax by 2050, you know what the Winter Street Exchange and Bayview Road and Bears Road coming off the By High is like? What's it going to be like with 1 million people?
Well, Greg, the council, whatever staff would tell you that's why they need to have bike lanes and get people out of cars in order to be able to sustain and to accommodate 1 million people. You don't buy that, eh?
Listen, like I said, I've been doing this for over 3.5, almost 3 years now, with 20,000 deliveries. Mm-hmm. And there's next to no bikers in the city. So what makes them think that if they add another 500,000 people, that they're going to half them are going to be on a bicycle? Yeah. It's not even. It's not even logical. It's ridiculous.
Okay, Greg. Appreciate the call. Take care, brother. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi, Todd. Yeah, I just want to comment on the idea of strong mayor powers. And personally, I don't really think it's a good idea, and I'm not sure the reason why. I don't think it's the case that council is deadlocked and they're just never able to pass any bylaws because they never agree. I think the sort of problem that some people feel is that council agrees too much with each other and they pass laws that they don't like. But I'm not sure how a strong mayor would solve that. In the case of Andy Fillmore, maybe he's a little skeptical of bike lanes. So, some might view that as a good thing. But let's just say you get a pro bike lane mayor who's just hell-bent on bike lanes and doesn't want just, to continue bike lanes, wants all roads to be bike lanes. Then what? How do you stop him? Council? No, because you voted in strong mayor powers. So, I'm not sure the purpose, but I think, I just sort of speak up and regarding Sean Cleary's comments about fighting it out, and that's the purpose of democracy, and me just sort of saying that's sort of, very anti-democratic and very telling. And I think this is also sort of, the idea of the strongman that's going to come along and solve all the problems, and, democracy is just too complicated. We need one person who can decide and, make things right. Well, what if that person makes bad decisions? But I guess also to Patty Cuttell's point, what does it mean, strong mayor powers? We don't really know what's being talked about, so it's kind of hard to form an opinion. But sort of, in my mind, basically the mayor is the 17th councillor. So when it comes to municipal elections, I get to vote for my local district councillor that hopefully represents me at HRM Council. And I have also the additional option, the opportunity to vote for the mayor, who will also sort of maybe, represent, my viewpoints and sort of balance those against the sort of, larger needs of the municipality. So, I'm kind of fairly happy with that system. And I'm not sure what the mayor would be able to do for me as a voter that my own sort of district councillor who knows the area and possibly my needs much better would be able to do. So, just my thoughts on that.
Well, I would say that under the provincial and federal governments, when a government forms a majority, that is kind of, for all intents and purposes, the same thing. Premier Tim Houston has a lot of ultimate authority and power over what goes on in the province right now because he's got a majority and a supermajority. So it's kind of the same, is it not?
Yeah, I guess the only difference that would be a party system. So there's opportunities within the party for sort of ideas to be afforded, advanced, voted on, and all that kind of stuff. If you take that and reduce it all to just one person, I don't think that would be good. Sort of you get rid of the Conservative Party and Tim Houston's just the leader of the provincial government kind of thing without the sort of caucus and all of that to sort of give him input, advice, balance and all that kind of stuff, or potentially remove him when they feel he isn't doing a good job and stuff like that. So they're two very different systems. So I'm not sure it's a direct comparison can be made there.
Okay, pal, appreciate it.
Right on, thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. What's on your mind on this Monday? Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your call. So it reaches is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. Aaron's giving us a call. Hello, Aaron.
Morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. I'm just calling in about Iran again this morning. You asked whether it was a big mistake, whether the Americans attacked them the other day, and I'd say, yeah, it was a big mistake, but it's not clear how big of a mistake that was because that depends on what reaction Iran and its allies in the region have to it. What Iran's and their allies might do is they might go after Saudi Arabia's oil fields, the UAE's oil fields, and Kuwait's oil fields, and they may shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I know Scott Taylor the other day, he said that the Iranian Navy or something to that effect might not have the power to do that. It's not going to take the Iranian Navy to do that. We have some slow-moving targets running through a 21-mile gap between there. It's only going to take a couple missiles to hit those and for the insurance companies to pull their policies on those ships. And until the conflict ends, they will not have any more shipping through there. Now, that could possibly draw the Americans into the region, their Navy into the region to try to counter anything like that. But as far as boots on the ground goes, America and Israel together couldn't go into Iran and topple that country. It's huge. There's 90 million people there. It's not on the books. Another concern I have is the attack that they did on those nuclear facilities. The one that's underground, the most important one, they didn't even scratch that place. So the only way they're going to be able to take that place out would be a tactical nuclear weapon. So that's an X factor in all of this. I'm not sure that Israel is restrained enough to not do something like that, but I guess we'll see. There's a lot of X factors here, and it's very difficult to predict how this will play out. The Iranian people, I think the Americans and Israelis think that they're going to try to overthrow their own government because regime change is exactly what they're up to. That is the ultimate goal here. So overthrowing, it's not going to happen. These people have been galvanized around their government at this point. They're smart enough to know they don't want their country to turn into the next Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, or you name it, whatever other, Iraq. So that's not going to happen either. At this point, I think everything is kind of in Iran's hands now, how they're going to react to that. And there's the X factors of what the Americans and Israelis are going to do to try to possibly topple that government. And that's basically where we're at this point with it.
Yeah, and look, Iran and its proxies have been neutered to some degree, not neutered, but it certainly have had their power reduced. Talking about Hamas, of course, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and that is really Iran's number one, I think, method of retaliation. And without that, I don't know what powers Iran can have when it comes to retaliation.
Well, they have some proxies in Iraq, the Houthis and stuff like that. They haven't really been neutered. The Americans went in and went after them, and they couldn't really take them down, so they cut and run. And the Houthis basically calmed down their attacks on the shipping because I think there was an agreement. I'm not sure what that was, but there's still a viable threat. And that shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, they would also have to go down the Yemeni coast, which would just be a crapshoot for anybody going down there. So they do have some allies in the region, and we're not sure that what other Muslim, maybe Sunnis that might join into that fight because, as much as Shias and Sunnis do not like each other, one thing is for sure, they dislike the Americans and Israelis far more.
Yeah.
So, there's so many X factors going on in here. And I will say Gar Party, he's excellent. He really knows
his stuff. He sure does.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he has some ideas, but I'd say most experts on this at this point, they're just going to be saying there's too many X factors going on here. So we just have to see how this one plays out.
Well, and the other thing as well is what's going on with Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and his grip on what is still a democracy, but some would say it is a shadow of a democracy at this point with Netanyahu and his grip on that country, right?
They call it a democracy, but I mean, let's see, the Palestinians don't seem to have much say in that democracy.
Right.
So,
That's right.
We'll just put a little asterisk on the democracy of Israel.
Yeah, and of course, Israel's got a nuclear weapon, and some would suggest that if a nuclear weapon is okay for Israel to have, then look, I'm not saying this, but the argument is made that why wouldn't Iran be allowed to have one if Israel has one, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I would say Israel would be one of the countries most likely to use one of these weapons. And I would say that Donald Trump, possibly as a show to the rest of the world, might use one on that underground facility, like I said, to just show Russia and China, hey, I'm willing to use one of these things. Because it's out in the middle of the desert, it wouldn't destroy a city or anything like that, and cause world condemnation in the kind of way that a regular nuclear weapon would. So there's just too many X factors here, and it's hard to predict what's going to go down.
Okay, good call, Aaron. Yeah. Thanks for the call, pal.
Thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Fred, hello.
Yeah. Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. With respect to the 1 million people by, 2050 in
2050.
Halifax HRM?
Yep.
I cannot possibly see us attaining that goal. If we do, it'll be at our own demise. And the reason I say that is all you have to do is look at the Pockwalk watershed right now. It can't sustain us, so the water levels are going down. We're not even in a dry spell right now this year. I think it's down like 2 feet right now, right across the board. And there hasn't been any planning for a water desalination plant or water capture, which takes 10, 15 years to build. And then with you building up, there's also urban spread. You build out. All you have to do is look at Toronto back in the 1980s. For the most part, they were sustainable in their arable land around Toronto until they built up and built out, and then they basically lay waste to an entire green belt where hundreds of thousands of homes now sit, and they have to rely on things like hydroponics and imports of food. So really, do we want to be in that position? I understand the necessity and the need for more money and an aging population, but there's got to be a better thing than to just say, oh, I want 1 million people.
Yeah, for sure. Resources like water, I mean, that's something that you can't do anything about. I mean, obviously, if you're drawing from it, and like you said, water levels are down now, it's not magic. Nothing's going to magically change. As a matter of fact, things will probably get worse.
Exactly, and their sewage treatment plants are only capable for what we have right now, and even they're having issues with those that they're going to actually shut them down and pump the sewage back into the ocean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and if you look at Montreal, what are they doing? They're doing the same thing every 3 or 4 years. So you gotta say enough's enough. This is where we're at. This is how big we can be, and then carry on to the left.
Okay, Fred, appreciate it. Take care.
Yep.
902-405-6000. Albert, hello.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, I support microtransport, the little scooters and bicycles and all that, but there's got to be a way of doing that without chopping down one single hardwood tree from our priceless urban forest. If you look at a flow chart, biological flow chart of one tree, the amount of carbon that it absorbs and the amount of oxygen it produces in return, plus other toxins that it filters out of the air, and the difference in cooling costs of a street that's of a shaded street compared to a street with no trees on it. There's no way you can ever offset the environmental degradation by changing transportation from cars to bicycles. Even if it was all year round, and it's not going to be all year round in Halifax. It's just a short-term transportation phenomenon. So we got to have protection for our urban forest. And I just noticed there's plans to deforest Roby Street, all the mature elm trees that the city did such a good job of protecting from the Dutch elm disease that ravaged the province years ago. I see some activists have found it necessary to put signs on these trees, to save these trees. It's just scandalous how callous this city is and this council is about urban amenities, especially our urban forest. There's way to bicycle lanes. You put them on side streets. You can put them, design them to go around trees if necessary. Halifax is unique in this way. There's just no respect for the natural amenities of this city. If you compare other cities like Victoria, I'm told you have to get permission from the city if you want to remove a tree from your own property. That's how they appreciate the value of an urban forest out there. I think Halifax would be nothing but a national laughingstock if they found out that we cut down 250 trees to save the environment. It's just appalling. So I think we got to put the amenities first. We don't need to make a priority of traffic or bicycle lanes. We can preserve our trees, not touch a single tree, and find a way around them. Okay.
Okay, Albert. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Greg, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Todd?
I'm well. You?
Good. This thing about this Iran and what's going on. I mean, I got to tell you one thing: the Iranians better realize that you don't want to mess with the United States. I mean, that's been a thing for years. They got a heck of a lot more firepower than these guys do. And I just say though, something has to be done because these people want an atomic weapon or atomic bomb to destroy Israel, and that's their main purpose. And the world got to get up and say, look what these people are doing. It's terrible. I mean, I'm just saying that this has to stop somewhere. Because the fact is it's going to be destruction and everything else. But I'll tell you one thing: the Iranians better not underestimate the Americans. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Greg, appreciate the call. Take care at 902-405-6000. Look, people have said that about the Americans going into Iraq. People said that about the Americans going into Afghanistan. People said that about the Americans going into Vietnam, going into Korea. I mean, the list is getting pretty lengthy, right? The bottom line is what's the end game, right? What's the end game? And if the end game is to not allow Iran to have nuclear capability, well, has that been established? We don't know. That depends on what intelligence you're listening to or you're paying attention to. But regime change, Donald Trump has mused about regime change, although his top staff have said that regime change is not in the works. But if regime change is in the works, how do you make that happen? Can you do that through missile attacks, through your Air Force? I can't see how that can be. And What do you replace it with ultimately? And do you have to occupy a country in order to have regime change? Again, the parallels here, Iraq and Afghanistan in recent memory have not gone well, have not succeeded. So again, the might of the U.S. military, yes, it's there. The U.S. military can invade and overtake just about any country in the world. There's no doubt. But then what? Then what? That's always been the question. Then what? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, get some time to top the hour. Get some open lines for you as well, folks. What's on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. This email from Dave, then back to the phones. And again, we get some open lines for you. If you'd like to sneak in a call, we get some room for you. 902-405-6000. Dave says this, then back to the phone. Says, Mayor Fillmore has significant support in the community, which only appears to be growing by the day due to his common sense governance. Most people support streamlined active transportation, but when the cost of bike lanes for 0.5% of our failing road infrastructure balloons to almost $100 million, it's irresponsible not to take a pause. It's just simple. It's that simple. Sean Cleary's willingness to take a cloak and dagger jabs at the mayor and premier is irresponsible and ultimately unethical. It's just the latest example of his inability to participate when someone offers a differing point of view. There is a growing movement underway at council, movement with which Councillor Cleary appears to fundamentally oppose. A small common sense working group in the best interest of HRM, not just special interest groups in specific districts. And Mayor Fillmore is at the helm. Comes from Dave. 902-405-6000. Jeff, hello.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
About these exaggerated speed bumps, I fail to understand why the city does not paint them yellow, because you get a few inches of snow and there they are upon you. And if you put the front tire on one side and the rear tire on the other side, the elevation is so high that low-rising cars must get damaged, and who pays for the damage? I'm sure the city wouldn't. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, and I'm sure that's happened, right?
Yes. I've talked to people who have low-rising vehicles, very low. Some of them are only inches off the ground, and you have to scrape the bottom of your car. I don't understand the city. It's just it's so backward, and you can't paint them white because you got snow with you can't see them. But anyway, I appreciate you taking my call.
All right, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, we get some open lines for you if you'd like to sneak in a call. I'm not sure when it comes to traffic calming what else you can do other than speed bumps, or I'm not sure. Like bump outs, do they work? I don't know, but I get people's frustration. I really do. But one thing I will say is that they are effective when it comes to slowing you down, because I know that by experience, when I drive in areas where there's speed bumps and you know they're there, you definitely slow down. And to his point, to the caller's point, yes, some people will have damage to their vehicle if they're low enough, for sure. I mean, I'm sure if you drove a Lamborghini in HRM, you'd probably get lots of damage because we know that they're low riding cars. Not that many people have a Lamborghini in HRM, but I get your point. Rob says this via email. He says, it's one thing to have public consultation on a project, but to suggest that it gives you a blank check literally to spend whatever you want to achieve that goal is ludicrous. If the budget massively increases and we're going to spend way more on bike lanes than what was suggested during the original consultation, then we need to have public consultation once again. It comes from Rob, and I would agree with that. To me, it would be irresponsible otherwise to not do so. I mean, I don't see what the big issue is here when it comes to wanting to have another look at this. To me, it would be reckless not to. And for some members of council to suggest that it's that councillors who are suggesting this are anti-cyclists or anti-active transportation that's not fair, in my opinion. I mean, ideology is at the heart of everybody, I guess, to a certain degree. Everybody forms an opinion based on some level of predisposed thought and ideology, but at some point you need to take those You need to take those blinders off or those goggles off and look at things from a fiscally prudent manner and consider the taxpayers and get best bang for your buck. I mean, ultimately, that is what council needs to do is along with planning and be good planning, and you need to be good fiscal stewards. I know that's old school politics, but it's true. And if not, then let's just suggest that council said no matter what, we're forging ahead with the plan as is, without a revision, without looking at it, without another analysis or any more information. I mean, what's the end result? It would be God knows how much money this project would end up costing us. We don't know how much it would be. 200 million, 300 million. At what point do you say enough's enough, and it's time to put the brakes on? So what Tony Mancini is going to table this week, I think is prudent and I think necessary. And again, for those of you who are just tuning in or you haven't heard about this, his motion will call for staff to report on a list of bike lane projects proposed from 2026 through 2029 and their estimated cost. Assess the feasibility of alternative network solutions that could reduce future costs, and provide opportunities for additional external funding sources. What's the problem with that? I don't see any issue with this. Existing work that's tendered for this year, from what my interpretation is of this motion, will go forward. So existing work will go forward, so we're not breaking any deals or any contracts with contractors. Because, look, in fairness, it's difficult to do that, and there would be penalties incurred. And look, let the work finish or be completed that's already started this year or is scheduled to go this year. That addresses that. This calls for work in 2026 through 2029 and their estimated costs. So to me, what's wrong with that? That's number one. Number two, assess the feasibility of alternative network solutions that could reduce future costs. So let's get staff and planners to look at perhaps what might be some better ways of designing this thing. And maybe the staff comes back and says, look, we think what we've got in play now is the plan that needs, and justify it. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with having a look at what, if there might be alternatives that could be effective and better? And thirdly, provide opportunities for additional external funding resources. What's wrong with that? Go back to the province. Go back to the federal government. Go back to any other possible funding source. I don't know if you could get sponsors or what. The Oval is sponsored. Perhaps you could go to the private sector and get some help. I don't know. Maybe not, but why not explore if there are additional external funding sources? If you can save the taxpayers of HRM any amount of money, it's worth investigating and looking at. So I don't see any problem with this at all. I'll be very surprised to see, or not surprised. I'm anticipating how council supports this or not, and which councillors will support it or not. I'm betting that there will be some councillors that will just will oppose it, based on, as mentioned, predisposed ideas. I would hope that any member of council will look at this and look at it from a prudent perspective and have a good solid look at it. We shall see where it goes. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Moshe Lander, economist at Concordia University, about a couple different things. We'll be back. All right, joining us for a chat is Moshe Lander, economist from Montreal's Concordia University. Moshe, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your participation as always.
Hello.
All right, so I wanted to talk to you, and we'll talk to you about this story on the CPP and U.S. investments. But first, I would like to get your take, if you will, on what's going on in the Middle East and Iran, and not that specifically, but more on the global commodity, of course, which is oil. And potentially the oil that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil goes through that, and that shipping lane is very vulnerable right now. How might markets react to this? What are your thoughts on this, if you will?
You've already been seeing in the last couple of weeks since all of this started that the global price of oil is starting to drift up. And the thing is that where most people might say, well, oil doesn't affect my life, it does, because oil is used for a variety of other things, including to create gasoline. And so as we're heading into the summer season in Canada, where everybody wants to drive, go on vacation, the kids are done school, this is now where you're going to see gasoline demand jump anyway. And so even in the absence of these actions, when demand rises, price goes up. So this is just going to add even further pressure. And of course, for heating purposes, although I don't think that's necessarily an issue right now, or for cooling purposes, you're going to need oil derivatives to help keep your home at a comfortable temperature. Canadians, of course, are worried about cost of living affordability issues. I don't know that there's ever a right time for this to happen, but this certainly seems like the wrong time.
Yeah, and of course, it trickles down through the economy because of manufacturing and energy that's needed to manufacture. And I get that that it depends on how the power is generated at source, but delivery and trucking and shipping and all that. So it's got a huge ripple effect.
It does, and you're exactly right, that even if you're not oil dependent, if you are energy dependent, then as this goes up, it incentivizes people to shift to whatever degree they can to other forms of energy. But when they start shifting to other forms of energy, what does that do to the price of that energy source? It goes up as well. So even if you're somehow oil-free in your life, the one place, of course, in Canada these days that's probably not upset to see this happening is Alberta, and maybe to a lesser extent Newfoundland and Labrador. Alberta consistently relies on its non-renewable resource revenue for the bulk of its government revenue. It doesn't have a sales tax provincially. Income taxes are the lowest in Canada, so they really do live and die by the price of oil. And they really embarrassed themselves when they recently came out with their budget, forecasting an oil price that was just completely too high for the economic reality around them. This sort of event might save them. I don't know that necessarily they're applauding what's going on, but they might actually see this as a positive where other provinces are saying, hey, our manufacturing base is going to suffer because of this, and it could actually hurt provincial revenues.
Yeah, and as far as Canada using that oil domestically, that's not realistic because it's first of all, getting that oil to our markets is not realistic because we don't have pipeline capacity generally, and the type of oil that it is, it's not like sweet crude which can be drilled from the ground. It's generally bitumen oil sands product, and that creates a more intense refinement process. So it's not as though we can switch the tap and start using our own oil domestically. Is what I'm getting at.
You're exactly right. And that's one of the big things then when we hear Trump say that we don't need Canada for anything, we don't need their oil. Well, yeah, they do, because their infrastructure is built for our oil. And, if you think about just the way pipelines are designed, the bad analogy that I use is if I hand you a straw and say that I want you to push through this straw regular water, chocolate milkshake, or a blizzard from Dairy Queen, it requires very, very different science to get that comfortably through the straw. It's the same thing then for pushing the oil through a pipeline. You're talking about something very different between the water equivalent, like that sweet crude, and what Alberta extracts from the ground, which is more like the Dairy Queen blizzard. So you can't just switch that stuff over. So even when Trump's saying we don't need Canada, you're going to, and you're going to need it for a long time, because flipping over that infrastructure is hugely expensive.
All right, so uncertainty, and this is it seems to me that this issue is not going to go anytime soon, as long as this conflict is happening in Iran, which doesn't appear to be ending soon. So markets don't like uncertainty, and generally would the result is higher market price, is it not, under uncertainty?
It absolutely should be. I think that if there were like an end goal, if it were regime change or even just change of leadership or whatever the objective is, if that were clearly stated, which is a huge accomplishment for the Trump administration on anything, then at least markets might react saying, okay, we're getting closer to that goal, so we're actually more optimistic. But when you don't seem to have an end goal, or you don't seem to understand why this is even being done in the first place, this is the jitters that the markets say, all right, well, we're not exactly sure why you did this and what you're going to do next. So beyond just the higher energy prices as an input, it probably lowers the expectations of profits, as global uncertainty means probably slower growth.
Okay, I want to shift gears because this was an interesting story that I want to get your take on that I read on the CBC website. A few weeks ago, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board revealed that 12% of the CBC's assets are invested in Canada, its lowest level ever. The large chunk of the $714 billion fund, $714 billion, that's massive. 47% is currently invested in the United States, its highest level ever. And, of course, this is contradictory to elbows up, I suppose, and all the rhetoric that we hear about Buy Canadian. But when all is said and done, those who are managing the CPP say that their mandate, priority one, is to make money, not no ethical guidelines or where to invest that money. It's about making money. That is the fiduciary responsibility. Is that correct?
It is, and I applaud it as we all should. This is the big thing that when we hear about, especially across student campuses these days, the idea of divest and these sorts of strategies. Great, you can take a moral stance on these things. And so in the case of the CPP, you want to take a stance that, hey, we should be investing in Canadian companies. That's fine. But those Canadian companies were available for investment to begin with. So why wasn't the CPP taking advantage of it? Because for a given level of risk, you get a better return investing in U.S., or for the same return, you get lower risk in the U.S., or very often you get better return and lower risk. So if you're worried about trying to keep your taxes low while still trying to support retirees and senior citizens, this is the way you go. You chase after the best return for your risk tolerance. And if that's the U.S., don't worry too much about what the politics are. You just go for money. And I think that's to our benefit. Otherwise, we'd be talking about higher payroll taxes, which would clearly not be supported by Canadians, or would be going to seniors and saying, sorry, folks, we got to scale back what you get. But thanks for working all your life in Canada.
Okay, might there be a way to kind of, over time, incrementally introduce Canadian resources or Canadian projects into this and divest a bit of it at a time in a kind of a systematic way?
You can. It's just you better also explain to Canadians what the trade-off is going to be, which is that $700 whatever billion is going to deliver a lower return, or it's going to mean higher risk to try and maintain that return. So if you go to seniors and tell them, hey, listen, we're going to invest in Canada because it's something that we believe in politically, but we need to scale back your benefits by $50 per pay term. I mean, I don't know that they're necessarily going to sign up for that. And so that's the conundrum there. But look, if you explain it clearly that that's the trade-off and people say, I'm prepared to accept that, hey, that's democracy at play there, and I have no problems with it. It's just that politicians say we should be investing in Canada. Great. But if Canada can offer a better return or lower risk, we'd be doing it in the first place.
Are there those who are pushing for this?
I'm sorry?
Are there those who are pushing to divest in some of these U.S. assets?
There's always going to be people that are pushing for this, and they're always going to be making the argument that we should put Canada first. But what they're not offering is what's the trade-off. So, to me, I think that I say this semi-jokingly but somewhat seriously, that's a child behavior, right? A child wants something but doesn't want to have to give up anything. And so part of the maturation process is you realize there's no such thing as a free lunch. So if you want that, I'm perfectly willing to listen, but you tell me what it is that you're prepared to give up. It's either higher payroll taxes or lower benefits for seniors or both. And so if you're comfortable with that trade-off, I don't have a problem with it. I just feel that time and time again, that's not what's presented to people. It's just we should be doing this. Great, we should be, but what are the consequences and why weren't we doing it in the first place? It's not because of our overt love for the Americans even before these tariffs. It's merely because it's the best on offer, and that's what we were using to try and finance our programs at the least cost to the taxpayer.
All right, so this is a Crown Corporation that this investment board that manages the CPP, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so does it take direction from government or is it independent from government?
Well, in theory, the government will give it some basic guidelines. Like, it's not like they're saying, here's $700 billion, have a good time and let us know what you come up with, right?
Yeah.
So you can introduce legislation that says, hey, you have to behave in a certain way. It's kind of not fundamentally different than, for example, like Canadian content in your industry, that you can say that, hey, you have to have a certain amount of Canadian content, but what's the trade-off? It's that you might be promoting local music and the local industry at the expense of maybe what's the best music out there. So it's the same idea here as well. You could put that legislation in, but again, politicians have a responsibility to their voters to say, we're putting this legislation in and it's not consequence-free.
Moshe, always great. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Anytime.
All right, take care. Moshe Lander, economist from Montreal's Concordia University. Ottawa shows no signs of limiting MAID, medical assistance in dying, after UN panel calls for reversal. We'll chat about this when we come back. Ottawa is giving no sign that it intends to amend existing legislation on medical assistance in dying, something a UN committee called for earlier this spring. The federal minister responsible for disability spoke at a hearing of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recently, about 2 months after the committee called on Canada to repeal the 2021 law that expanded eligibility for assisted dying to those whose deaths were not reasonably foreseeable. Joining us to talk about all this is James Cowan with the group Dying with Dignity, a retired senator as well here from Nova Scotia. James, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right. So what's your, I guess, feelings on this government and where they might go with this? Or because there was a lot of talk of, obviously, the Conservatives campaigned on certainly scaling this back. So what are your thoughts on so far this government's outwardly what it's saying about this?
Well, I think the minister's taken exactly the right step, taken exactly the right position. The courts have determined that to prevent people from accessing medical assistance in dying unless they're terminally ill is unconstitutional. And a court in Quebec made that decision several years ago. And to comply with the decision, Parliament amended the legislation to remove the condition that had been put in 2015 that one's natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable. So to do what the Conservatives are suggesting or what the UN committee has suggested would be contrary to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay, what about groups like Inclusion Canada among those organizations that filed for a charter challenge against what's known as Track 2 MAID? Does that surprise you that groups like Inclusion Canada would table this?
No, there are certainly people who feel very strongly, as Inclusion Canada does, that this change ought to be made, and they have challenged, this decision in the Ontario courts, and that's before the Ontario courts. Unfortunately, the UN report to which you refer quotes those allegations and says they are conclusions. They're not. They're simply allegations which have yet to be tested in court. And in due course, the Ontario courts will make a decision on those allegations. But the Quebec court has already decided in a case several years ago, launched by two persons with disabilities who said that they were being discriminated against because while they met all of the other strict criteria for accessing medical assistance in dying, their natural death was not reasonably foreseeable. And the court said, in my view rightly, that exclusion was discriminatory, and they struck it down. And as a result, Parliament, as I said, amended the legislation, and now you can access medical assistance in dying, even if your death is not reasonably foreseeable, providing you meet all of the other criteria that are set forth in the legislation.
All right, what is that criteria?
Well, there are several. You still you have to be suffering from a medical condition which is grievous and irremediable, and it causes enduring and intolerable suffering, and that's intolerable in the eyes of the person who's suffering. It's not something that a court would determine. It's something that the individual, because we all have individual our own levels of comfort with suffering, but it is, if your suffering is intolerable to you and you meet these other criteria, then you're able to access medical assistance in dying. And to restrict that and to say, well, if you can't do it if you have a disability, that's discriminatory in itself. You can't access medical assistance in dying simply because you have a disability, but you shouldn't be precluded from accessing medical assistance in dying because you have a disability. I think it's a matter of personal choice, and those persons with disabilities ought to have the same rights as other Canadians do. That's what freedom of choice means, and it's discriminatory to provide otherwise.
Okay, what about guardrails here? And do you think sufficient guardrails are in place? Obviously you do, but tell me why you feel that they are.
Well, I think they are. In the case, the number of people who access or apply for MAID whose natural death is not reasonably foreseeable is very small. It's not most of the applicants for medical assistance in dying in Canada are those who are track 1, those whose natural death is reasonably foreseeable. But if your natural death is not reasonably foreseeable, and this is what we call track 2, then there are additional safeguards that have to be in place. When you apply, there's a 90-day waiting period, which you have to pass through before you can access medical assistance in dying. And there are very specific requirements that you have to be informed about all of the various treatments and other options which are available to you, and you have to have consultations with people who have expertise in those particular disciplines in order to make sure that you fully understand and appreciate what the options are that are available to you. Now, whether you choose to access those options, that's a matter of individual choice. That's what this is. This whole availability of medical assistance in dying is. It's not. Nobody can force you to access medical assistance in dying. It's an option which is available to those who meet these very strict criteria, and the legislation provides very strict guidelines and I think perfectly adequate and appropriate safeguards.
All right. So what about, I guess, this cropping up in future political campaigns? Do you anticipate that?
Well, it is. There always are. I mean, this is, as we've discussed before, Todd. This is a topic which about which people feel very strongly. Mm-hmm. There are people like me who feel very strongly that this is a very appropriate and progressive and logical system to have available to Canadians who choose to access it. Mm-hmm. But there are certainly others, and I respect their opinion, who feel that this is completely wrong and that we shouldn't go there at all. But the courts have spoken. The Supreme Court of Canada back in 2015 said that the prohibition against a physician assisting someone to die was unconstitutional, and they struck down that provision in the criminal code and reversed a decision that the Supreme Court of Canada itself had made back in the 90s, when they said that was still a appropriate prohibition. But times have changed, attitudes have changed, and the court recognized that in Carter in 2015, and this is continuing to be an issue. Many of us feel that we should go further, and we should allow people to provide advance requests for medical assistance in dying, or that it should be available to those whose suffering is caused by mental illness, equally with those whose suffering is caused by physical illness. And you and I've discussed that before. This is a topic of great interest to many people. But my own view is that we have in Canada a very carefully thought out system, and that it's an appropriate balance of the rights of the individual recognized by the Supreme Court of Canada and safeguards or guardrails in place to make sure that the system is not abused. And there have been, while there have been certainly some concerns expressed, there are no cases that I'm aware of where the system has been abused and somebody has provided medical assistance in dying to persons who didn't meet the criteria set forth in the legislation. And if there were, then it's entirely appropriate that we have medical regulators in every province of the country, and if a person felt that the system had been abused, then they can make a complaint to the medical regulator in their province, and that regulator will deal with it. But there have been no cases that I'm aware of where a complaint has been made and has been upheld. So I think Canada should be very proud of the system we have in place.
James, appreciate your time as always. Thanks.
Always, Todd. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Good day.
All right, you got a Jim Cowan, dying with dignity, retired senator from Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia woman helps others navigate living with disabilities and chronic pain. We'll chat with that woman when we come back. All right. I saw this story on the CV website, and I read it, and I was impressed by it, and I thought I want to talk to this person. The headline, Disabled Not Dead, Nova Scotia woman helps others navigate living with disabilities and chronic pain. Kimberly Neary is that person, co-founder and co-president of Disabled Not Dead Society. Kimberly, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right, so Disabled Not Dead, that says it all, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Who came up with that?
That's me.
Yeah?
I came off work in 2013, and when I was going through the paperwork, there was so much confusion on what you can and can't do while you're disabled. And my doctor looked and he said, "You're disabled, not dead. I don't understand why it's so difficult."
And you said, "Aha."
And it just stuck.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. All right, so tell us about your journey, I guess, first of all.
So I have a birth defect. I was born with spina bifida back in the 80s, and I walked until 5 years ago. In 2019, I was told I needed to add a chair for mobility, and got that at the end of 2019. Started in the wheelchair ramp room, which is in the basement at rehab, in January, and we all know what happened in March of 2020.
COVID.
So I got this chair that I didn't know how to use, and then as I got more confident with it, I got out and started doing things. I started with wheelchair basketball. It's a really well-established program, and from there, I found out I'm way too old to play competitive wheelchair basketball with the 25-year-olds. So I started in athletics, which is throwing, shot put, javelin, discus for me. And I met RJ there. And the first day, we sat in the parking lot and talked for 3 hours. It was the first time that either of us had met somebody else at this stage in a wheelchair and learning all of the things that we were learning. And he's a university student. He's now going to third year at Del Med. First wheelchair user in Del Med program. Whoa. Super proud of him. And he was able to do the advanced wheelchair skills class that I wasn't able to enroll in. Confidence, I guess, I didn't get into it. And he took it. And so he approached me one day and he's like, "I know you wanted to do this nonprofit and you wanted to wait till after you compete in the Paralympics, but I think we need to do it now." So we started last February. And it's been going so well, and the reception has been so warm.
Wow. All right, so tell us about your organization.
So Disabled Not Dead Society, we have 3 main programs right now. Our first one was our socials, and that is where we take community members out somewheres, usually low to no cost or events, just because when you're in rehab, you're not allowed to work. So we wanted to make sure that it's accessible financially to everybody. June event is an ice cream social at Cows on the waterfront. We do picnics in the park. We've done Boston Pizza. They are a good sponsor for us. So many different things. We tried a couple of sports now and again. And that's our first one that we started with, was creating that social connection. Not everybody wants to play sports. And that was the only thing that we found that was offered for us. So we wanted to make sure that we had that social aspect. Once we got that underway, we started Wheelchair Skills. It's an advanced peer-led wheelchair skills. So RJ is our lead. He actually has a rec therapy background. And then Annika, who is now in rec therapy, is our second lead with him. And they both teach this wheelchair skills. We set up a course. It's in a safe environment, usually inside Cheb. During the summer, we go out into the community and we learn on curbs and stuff that you'll actually run into. But we have people that are spotters for us. And we actually have the spotting straps that they use at rehab. So they put a strap on the back of the wheelchair and hold you up so that you can't fall and injure yourself. And then our newest one is the Gordy Publicover Memorial Mentorship Program. One of our founding members, Gordy Publicover, was a quadriplegic for almost 40 years when he passed away suddenly in November. And he was working on the mentorship program, and he mentored all of us. So we took on that. And in February, we launched our mentorship program. And now we've got, 12 mentors, and I think 7 or 8 mentees already registered and working together in that program.
Well, and if not for you guys, this work wouldn't be done, right? Imagine the void that would be in people's lives.
We're the first for us, by us organization in Nova Scotia, and with 37% of Nova Scotians identifying as disabled, there was that real need for it to be out there to show people what you can do on your own and what your life could look like and the things that you can achieve. So our goal and focus is to help people achieve their goals in life, whatever it may be. Some days for me, getting out of bed is a win for me. Some days it's, I rappelled off the side of a building, which I've done twice. I am currently training in powerlifting for the 28 Paralympics. I don't know if I'll make it, but the only way I'm going to find out is by trying. I train 3 days a week right now. I'll go up to 4 as we get closer to competition.
So it doesn't seem to me that you have too many days where you're having a hard time getting out of bed at this stage of your life.
For every, event that you choose to do, there's that repercussion of how long is it going to take me to recover from it.
Yeah.
We call it the spoon theory. So if it takes 1 spoon to get dressed and showered, and then it takes 1 spoon to get in the car and get where you're going, now you're down 2 spoons. You only have 5 for the day. What are you going to do with your other 3? But it's also teaching people how to balance that too.
Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to people with new injuries and the new reality of life, I imagine that is something that to help somebody navigate those waters is invaluable, right?
It sure is.
Yeah.
The first 2 years is what they say the learning curve for a new injury. And I myself did have to go through that. I was in a car accident in 2011, so I have had to navigate that as well and new chronic pain challenges. So with that, you don't know the questions that you should have or might have in the future, and you only have that access to your support inside the rehab for the duration of the time that you're inside the rehab. Yes, there's always connections. You'll be doing outpatients for, however long you're needed to do rehab, outpatient rehab afterwards. But we're there to help you figure those questions out before you leave. How do you get situated? How do you get set up? What grants are you available? How are you going to get equipment? I don't have insurance, so my wheelchair was $5,000 out of pocket. I have a motor assistant that I can put on it. That's another $5,000 out of pocket. Like, how do you find money to do that? Those things that you just don't know until you're in it.
Yeah. Well, nobody thinks that something's going to happen to them until it happens, right? That's human nature, right?
Exactly.
And that might be a good thing because we don't want people going through life being terrified of what can happen, right?
If you're fortunate enough to live long enough, you'll end up disabled at some point.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you mentioned what percent of Nova Scotians are disabled? 37%?
37%.
Okay, so what constitutes somebody disabled? What falls into that criteria?
That's everything from cognitive to physical disability, physical impairment. We specifically focus on people living with mobility limitations and chronic pain challenges. That's just what our group lives within, and that's what our peers are.
Yeah.
But there's so many other elements to disability.
Yeah, for sure. Chronic pain, and oftentimes people don't see it.
Exactly. And with that, we don't require people to have a diagnosis. We don't focus on diagnosis because the challenges still arise the same whether you're diagnosed or not.
Okay, what about all your partners in this? And we want to give shout outs to some people here?
Sure. I have 5 of us on the board, including myself. There's RJ, who is our 3rd-year med school student, and he is co-founder with myself. And then we have Sheldon, who is majored in pharmacy. And then we have Annika, who is in rec therapy. And we have Megan, who is an animationist.
Okay, and volunteers?
We have so many people that have volunteered with us over the time. Some people from the Dell Med School program, some people that work at the rehab, some community members who have reached out to help out and just, move tables for us when we're at Dell Cheb. which is a collaborative health building. We tend to hold a lot of events over there, and it's in classroom style, so we'll have to move tables around and whatnot. There's all the time. There's just so many people that have stopped to help us to make sure that we're ready for an event.
So you've learned how to get things done, obviously.
We have.
which is, I mean, it's a testament to you and your will and your desire to help others. It's got to be extremely rewarding, I would think.
Learning to ask for what you need. It's really hard and it's humbling to have to learn to ask for what you need. Mm-hmm. But once you learn how to do it and can clearly ask for what you need, more than enough people will help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think that's such a hard barrier to get through?
Because no one wants to feel like they need help all the time. And there's such a negative connotation around disability that you can't do things and you're always going to need help. And that's just not the case. Mm-hmm. If you set yourself up for success, the amount of assistance you'll need will be minimum.
Yeah, and the psychology, the mind game is as big as anything, right?
It definitely is.
Yeah. So what advice do you give to people when it comes to that?
Reach out to us if you're having help. If you need help figuring out how to navigate the disabled life.
Yeah. Okay. If people want to know more about it, how do they check you out? Obviously, you've got an online presence.
We're on Facebook and Instagram, Disabled Not Dead Society, HRM.
And it's not too hard to remember, Disabled Not Dead. Somebody could Google that and they'd find you as well, right?
They sure would.
Well, Kimberly, listen, you're a real inspiration, and thank you so much for coming in. It's been a great chat and fantastic. I can't say enough about what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
All right, great stuff. Kimberly Neary, co-founder and co-president of Disabled Not Dead Society. Check them out online. All right, I received an email late last week from Martyn Williams, who's an advocate for vulnerable road user safety. He's the founder of the group HRM Safe Streets for Everyone, and said that he wants to come on the air and I guess dispel some rumors, or not rumors, but some myths or about what's going on and the debate about road safety in our region. And Dr. Sara Kirk joins me as well, professor of health promotions at Dalhousie University. So hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having us.
Hi there. Martyn, pull that mic right into your mouth there, nice and tight. Okay, so Martyn, I guess let everybody know what you wanted to achieve with this chat, first of all.
I think, well, first of all, covering the first base, we know that congestion, categorically, we know congestion isn't caused by bike lanes or cyclists or things like removing, having no right on reds. Those are things related to vulnerable road user safety. They're not things related to congestion, and that's caused by having too many cars on our road.
Okay, and you feel that there are misconceptions out there about that?
Oh, for sure. Huge misconceptions, yeah. And if you look around you when you're stuck in traffic, you know that it's a lot of people in cars that are causing the hold-up, or it's a crash. We had something on the Windsor Street Exchange this morning, and a car broke down one way, and then there was a little crash the other way, and everything ground to a halt. So it's that kind of thing which is causing congestion.
Dr. Kirk, what's the empirical evidence tell us?
The empirical evidence tells us that it's cars, and particularly single-occupant vehicles, that are predominantly like 80 to 90% of what's on the road right now, particularly in the rush hour, that is causing congestion. There's no evidence that it's caused by bike lanes or the installation of bike lanes or any other sort of safety feature to make it safer for people outside of a car.
Okay, why do you think that people believe that is the case? What's perpetuating this myth then?
There's a construct called motor normativity, or you would also know it as car brain or car culture. That really, it's become so that this is the unconscious bias. It's the thing that is built around us, and so we do believe that the car is the king on the road, and so when we look at some of the things that we can, when we look at the statements about how cars are used in the world, we will justify them. We'll justify antisocial behaviour by drivers, and I'll just give you an example. Just thinking about, what other product do we think is okay to store on public property than a car? That's probably the best example I could give.
Okay. Martyn, what about the politics behind all this? What's your take on what council's doing or not doing, or in this debate that continues to be around council?
Yeah, I think that sometimes things get more attention than others. There's been a few things that have come across council's attention recently. One is this report on snow ploughing and the fact we don't really know if we're getting value for money on that. And certainly this thing has blown up. I get a sense that there's some political interference from the province going on here. They're supposed to have released a report that was supposed to come out in fall to help alleviate congestion. That report hasn't happened. Instead, we're getting this stuff about bike lanes. I feel it's a bit of political stirring going on. And we're reluctant to address the core of the issue, which is getting people out of cars.
So why would the provincial government have a vested interest in this?
I think that possibly, there a lot of their voters drive every day, and simply for a lot of people, and there was a great letter in Saltwire this morning, in fact, about it, is that people don't think about how they could actually use cars less, and they don't want to think about it. They want to blame bicycles or pedestrians or something like that. So I think that there is an issue of people needing to take personal responsibility. By all means, yes, we don't live in a perfect municipality in terms of buses, cycling, but, we have 15 park and rides in HRM. We have a lot of local services that are, people just don't think to walk or bike to instead of driving. So I do think we can all do more, like each of us needs to take personal responsibility, and the province can do more in promoting those alternatives like park and rides and cycling.
Okay, Dr. Kirk, when it comes to usage on active transportation, people call the show, and I'm sure you hear it as well, suggesting that nobody's using them. Mm-hmm. They anecdotally don't see anybody using them. What's your response to that?
Well, that's not true. The statistics for cycling and other forms of active transportation, we're actually very similar to Victoria in terms of our active transportation rates. They're more efficient. Bike lanes are actually very much more efficient. But I think the point is here, Todd, you've got to really think about, on the one hand, this province is talking about fixing healthcare. One of the biggest things that we need to be doing is actually preventing people getting sick in the first place. We have a physical inactivity problem here. A lot of people are not physically active enough for health benefits. They're also sitting for long periods of time. I mean, commuting is not good for your health. Let's face it. It's kind of, it causes stress. I mean, I hate driving. It causes stress. It's a long time being sedentary, especially if you're stuck in traffic for a long period of time. Getting people moving is something that this government's actually, talks about doing, but then it's doing the opposite in terms of actually enabling people to make those choices and make those opportunities and bring those opportunities to bear.
Okay, Martyn, the costs are inevitably going to be a factor here, and I don't think they should be dismissed entirely, because look, fiscal prudence is necessary for any governing body, including including this council. What's your response to those who have concerns about the escalating costs?
Yeah, I mean, these are all proposed future costs. So far, and it's very clear, there's a really good breakdown in a report provided by staff. The municipality has spent $6 million of municipal funds on bike lanes so far. For that, staff say we've already built 60% of the network, including the tactical solutions. They've billed the feds and the province $10 million. So far, we've spent $60 million on what we've got so far. And you can see it's not gold-plated. It's quite simple materials. Mm-hmm. Some of it's just a sharrow on residential streets. And now, all of a sudden, we have $77 million more to spend. I really wonder how that has escalated so much. Perhaps there are cheaper ways to do it. Perhaps we could just take, instead of widening roads, we could use existing road space. Some aspects of that cost estimate are surprising. Things do go up. But how have we managed to do so much on $6 million in municipal funds, $10 million of other levels of government funds? How have we built 60% on that?
So the idea of pressing pause and analyzing that's not a bad thing, is it? Or what did you take on that?
Definitely not pressing pause. I think plough ahead. By all means, look at some costs, see if there are some alternatives. Perhaps there are some more low-hanging fruits. I think that the issue with the McDonald's flyover bike thing has been tossed around for way too long. Perhaps there are some cheaper ways to do that, but we just need to get on with it. Definitely not pressing pause, but perhaps there are cheaper alternatives. But, let's have a look at the costs of cars as well. When we drew up the integrated mobility plan, which is the municipality's policy, they put in that if we carry on using cars as much as we do, we'll have to spend $750 million on new roads. So, the bike lane cost pales into insignificance compared to that.
Okay, Doctor, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, and I'll just talk about the externalities. So when you're thinking about physical inactivity, it costs the Canadian economy $7 billion a year in economic costs. So you're thinking about, we need to be thinking about the things that driving is driving. Literally, it's driving ill health, it's driving breakdown of the planet and the climate. And it's making, it really is making people sick. And so when we actually factor in the full economic cost of cars, they are really unsustainable. When we factor in the full economic cost for physical activities, we find that it's actually, it actually saves society money. So we actually should be doing more around building bike lanes, building physical activity into our day through active transportation than pausing. And if they're going to pause bike lanes, they better do the same for the cost of roads, because they are bankrupting us.
Okay, Martyn, anything you want to add to this before we wrap it up?
Yeah, one thing. Yeah, so behind all of this, people sometimes forget this and lose kind of perspective. But behind all of this is that vulnerable road users account for a very small proportion of overall crashes, like about 4%, but they account for 22% of fatal and injury crashes. So, the reason for all of this stuff, having no right on reds, building bike lanes, is safety. And we expect it in the workplace. We've got to have it on the streets as well. It's not safe for people to bike right now. So talking about pausing this is the wrong thing to do. By all means, see if we can do it cheaper, but we need to crack on.
Okay, thanks so much for coming in, the both of you. Appreciate it very much. Very informative. That is Dr. Sara Kirk with Dalhousie University and Martyn Williams, advocate for vulnerable road user safety. I'd like to thank Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass at the control board, doing a fine job as always. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.